the Shakahola deaths. Exhumation continues in Shakahola of Kilifi County. The death count now stands at 227 and probably more.
And as we talk about matters of security, a dusk to dawn curfew is extended by another 30 days amid intensified security operations across 6 targeted counties.
All right. And indeed, the public participation on the finance bill expires on Saturday, that is the 20th. The question is, will your views be incorporated in the proposed finance bill? That question will be answered tonight. We speak to the Member of Parliament for Kangema, that is the Honourable Peter Kihungi, as well as the Honourable Member for Mbeere North, that is Geoffrey Ruku. All of them belong to Kenya Kwanza, and it is important that we get their voice here because Azimio has already been ordered not to pass any proposals that are contained in the proposed finance bill. Question is, will Kenya Kwanza heed to some of the proposals by Kenyans? That's a big question tonight. But first things first, tonight's highlights. A sickening health system indeed. EACC and UN agency expose rampant graft in Kenya's healthcare projects. The bottomless graves of Shakahola. 14 more bodies exhumed, taking the tally to 227. And government extends the dusk to dawn curfew by 30 days in 6 North Rift counties. Our sign language interpreter tonight is Anne Wangeshi. My name is John Jacob Kioria. Welcome to the broadcast.
And I am Regina Manyara.
Now, a study by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime has exposed corruption and unethical conduct in the Kenyan Ministry of Healthcare projects.
Favoritism, conflict of interest, bribery, and distortion of procurement plans have been identified as the main issues of concern.
The study also shows that bribes were mostly received by county government employees, with the highest amount of bribe paid being 3 million shillings.
The study was conducted in both national and county health facilities, drawn from 25 sample counties.
Doctor, please get us an inhaler. I can prescribe you the inhaler and send it to XYZ Pharmacy in Hurlingham. All the way to Hurlingham.
500 members of the public were sampled, alongside 1,280 staff from county health and finance departments. 150 contractors were also involved. 56 people listed as key informants were also sampled. The survey showed that 86.3% of health staff and 80.6% of members of the public acknowledge the prevalence of corruption and unethical conduct in the health sector. In healthcare projects, 64.7% of the public and 43.5% of contractors admitted that corruption and unethical conduct were widespread. According to health staff, award of tenders was the procurement stage most plagued by corruption and unethical conduct at 43.5%.
Then in some project files, the team noted missing documents, especially the approved procurement plan, requisition, advertisement notice, BQs, engineers' estimates, evaluation reports, and even performance bonds.
The study shows that Meru, Tharaka Nithi, and Embu counties had more healthcare projects that had been completed at cost above planned budget. Makueni, Kisumu, and Migori had the highest levels of public involvement in the implementation of healthcare projects at 93.6%, 83.3%, and 81.3% respectively. However, Garissa, Wajir, and Nairobi counties had the lowest levels of public involvement.
There are people in this country who are hell-bent to enrich themselves on the backs of patient money. Very shameful. On donor money. That you cannot assist yourself, you are assisted. But there are people who have grouped themselves to benefit from these monies. I am not going to allow it to happen.
The EACC is working very hard towards helping the various institutions of government to work on preventive measures against corruption rather than for us to wait for corruption to happen and then go after the people who have been involved.
Following the recent changes at the Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, the Cabinet Secretary has vowed to undertake far-reaching reforms, including ensuring there is adequate supply of medical commodities.
The people that I have recommended and we have gazetted as the board members of KEMSA, I did that choice very carefully. That we want to ensure that KEMSA does its job and just doesn't do it but does it well, that they have to be stocked on the most essential drugs and health commodities needed to serve Kenyans.
Health Cabinet Secretary Susan Nakumicha says that she will oversee the implementation of the recommendations in the report. All these in a bid to restore sanity in the ministry that has been rocked by corruption incidents. Nancy Okware reporting for Prime Edition, Nairobi.
Thank you, Nancy. Looks like there's a developing story here at the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and where the Managing Director, Bernard Njiraini, is among 26 officials suspended for releasing counterfeit sugar condemned in 2018 to the market.
A statement from the head of public service, Felix Koskei, says the suspended officers were involved in releasing 20,000 bags that are found to be unfit for human consumption to the market.
And Benson Rioba is on that bit. That story is developing. He'll be updating us in a bit. But in the meantime, the death toll from the Shakahola tragedy has hit 227 following exhumation of 14 more bodies, where one body was recovered in the forest.
One person was also rescued during today's operation. This brings the number of those rescued from the tragic forest tragedy to 85.
More tragic news was received on Wednesday as detectives continue to search the forest in hopes of rescuing more people.
Na ile timu ambayo inahusika kwa kuwatafuta wenzetu pale kichakani imeweza kumwokoa mwanaume mtu mzima akiwa kwa hali mzuri.
Addressing the press at the Shakahola Command Center, Coast Region Coordinator Rhoda Onyancha said no arrest was made during the search and rescue mission. The regional boss noted that the number of missing persons had increased to 611 after one family filed a missing persons report.
Wale ambao tumeweza kuwakamata bado wanabaki 31 na kuna mtu mmoja leo amekuja kwa center na kusema kwamba anatafuta familia yake. Kwa hivyo wale ambao wameweza kufika kwa center yetu na kuripoti ama kupeana ripoti kwamba wanatafuta wenzao wameweza kufika 611.
DNA samples were taken on 93 bodies, while 14 people were reunited with their families. The exhumation exercise will continue on Thursday. Michael Mondiga for Prime Edition, Shakahola, Kilifi County.
On to matters security, the government has extended the dusk to dawn curfew in 6 counties for 30 more days in the areas where security operations have been underway to flush out bandits.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kioria says security agencies will stay put in the areas even after the elapse of a curfew period.
This as armed bandits raided Loruk area of Baringa County, shot and seriously injured one person and drove away with at least 300 heads of cattle.
Interior Cabinet Secretary Kioria, who toured Laikipia Operation Zone and also visited the officer at Cottage Hospital Nanyuki, said that the ongoing operation to weed out bandits will not cease even after the end of a 30-day dusk to dawn curfew.
We will crush banditry and make it part of our history as a country. It's barbaric, it's primitive, it's backward. We cannot permit a small group, a tiny minority of our people, to terrorize millions of people and hold back a whole region backwards from development.
Kindiki noted that the government aims at putting more resources to tackle banditry by properly equipping the security officers. At the same time, the CS ordered those living in Mukogodo Forest in Laikipia North, which has been established as a hiding ground, to vacate with immediate effect to allow smooth security operation exercise.
The police equipment modernization program to great levels to provide even more sophisticated equipment for personal protection of our officers, equipment for aerial security operations, including unmanned vehicles, armored vehicles, including armored aircrafts, because we want to resolve the security problem of this country permanently.
But as the Interior Cabinet Secretary visited the troubled Laikipia County in Baringo, it was not that rosy. Armed bandits attacked Loruk area of Baringo North, shot and injured one person before they drove away over 300 herds of cattle towards Paka Hills in Tiati. Kindiki is expected in Baringo for a pass-out parade of at least 200 police reservists.
Nalia kusunguka standa yote. Iyo watu anachukua ng'ombe yote. Sisi ni misikini sana. Hata sijui tawanya nini.
Irene Mchuma Udem, the Prime Edition.
President William Ruto has challenged African leaders to use the continent's abundant green energy to position itself as a green industrial hub.
The head of state called on nations of the global north to relocate industries to Africa and bring an end to the use of fossil fuels.
Speaking on Wednesday during the Pan-African Parliament Summit on Climate Policy and Equity in South Africa, President William Ruto said Africa must position itself as a solution to climate change.
It is a time to be bold, to be strong and resolute enough to confront these challenges with greater unity and greater commitment. It is time to extend our forefathers' Pan-African dream into a brave new world in order to bequeath the people of Africa and our future generations a much better, more secure and prosperous Africa that plays its role and makes its contribution in full to global affairs.
The president said relocating industries to Africa will strengthen the continent's balance of trade, ease pressure on African currencies, and mitigate the vulnerability arising out of dependency on capricious supply chains.
The only way for the world to achieve this net zero aspiration by 2050 is for countries which presently have net negative emissions, as we do in most of Africa, to make up for those on course to missing the 2050 goal. The implication of this scenario is that African countries are uniquely positioned to limit own emissions and at the same time contribute reductions everywhere.
The president noted that Kenya is leading in renewable energy usage. At the same time, President Ruto called for the reconfiguration of the United Nations to meet the needs of the global south that is currently disadvantaged.
We are tired of complaining. We are tired of being victims. We want to be part of the solution. Don't consign Africa to the margins of problems and being victims and managing adaptation. We have better proposals that can get all of us out of the quagmire that we are all in.
And clearly the president has mastered the art of public speaking and again, wooing people towards climate change. It looks like it is expertise.
Wow. Climate change is here, and if we adopt green financing, you can bet that Africa, especially Kenya, would be one of the beneficiaries.
All right, moving this forward, New Life Church leader, Pastor Ezekiel Odero, will have to wait a little longer to know the fate on his application on his frozen account, but that will come a little bit later. For now, the Bipartisan Committee will prioritize the composition of the IEBC selection panel as it embarks on the 12-point agenda on Thursday.
The committee says it will begin talks on the succession of retired IEBC commissioners as the top agenda for the next 2 weeks.
Additionally, the committee has written to both speakers of Parliament to formalize the mandate as a parliamentary ad hoc committee.
It is all systems go for the Bipartisan Committee constituted to address concerns by the opposition, touching on, among others, reconstitution of IEBC and the cost of living. This is after the committee agreed on their modus operandi in the next 60 days. In its priority list is the composition of the selection panel, tasked with vetting commissioners to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission that will succeed retired commissioners.
The IBC question is a common issue to both teams. We have discussed and we have agreed that it's one of utmost importance and we'll prioritize it. And therefore we have agreed that when we resume our next sitting, that's the next item we are going to deal with so that it's off the table.
In a week or two, we should be able to say this is what, as a committee, we feel should be done, because the country cannot stay for long without a functioning IBC. We need the commissioners as of yesterday.
The committee also agreed on a hybrid framework to conduct talks that would require parliamentary backing.
We have done the notification to the two speakers, and in that notification, which we'll share with you, we have requested them to issue a communication from the chair about the two committees, even during the recess of Parliament, because the standing orders enable them to do that.
The committee has also invited the public to submit written submissions for consideration through its joint secretariat.
Anyone with any idea is welcome to share it with us through our joint secretaries so that we can factor in our discussion.
The committee has also agreed to begin discussions on areas where both sides are likely to have a consensus before moving to complex issues.
The timelines, we have also put a rider that if need be, we will seek an extension. So it is not concrete, it's not cast in stone that we have to do this within given periods of time, in as much as we are bound by our moral obligation that we must deliver within given periods of time.
The talks were prompted by protests from the opposition over what they termed as government's failure to address high cost of living, as well as comprehensively address electoral concern. For Prime Edition, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Takes us to very first breather on Prime Edition, but just a reminder that the cost of living, when it is mentioned, obviously it rings in many Kenyans' minds. And we have a proposed finance bill. The proposals therein are subjected to public participation. That process ends on Saturday. Will your views be accommodated? We are talking to the Member of Parliament for Kangema, the Honourable Peter Kihunge, as well as Geoffrey Ruku, the Member of Parliament for Mbeere North. That is at the tail end of this broadcast.
Cost of living. Just yesterday we saw on social media that the sugar was trending. Why? Because the cost of a 2 kg pack of sugar is at almost 500 bob.
Yes, it's time for us to take a breather.
Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
The International Day for Women in Maritime is marked every year on the 18th of May. The day is celebrated to recognize the invaluable contribution made by all seafarers to international trade. This year, the theme is Mobilizing Networks for Gender Equality. Empowering women will ensure a thriving maritime and blue economy for Kenya, spur growth and development, and benefit everyone working in the global maritime community. The Kenya Maritime Authority will continue to support the empowerment of women in the maritime industry to excel, rise to greater heights, and make greater difference. Together for gender equality. Together, we can.
Swala zote na salamu zimfikie Hashimu.
Na ndio maana wale wengine wasiokuwa na imani na Mwenyezi Mungu huamini baadhi ya sehemu, bara zingine huamini kuwa sehemu kubwa ya Mungu mkubwa ni sehemu alikozalika kwa mama yake, kwa sababu akiwa na itikadi kuwa baada ya kuzalika akaweza kuishi katika dunia hii, hawezi kupita tena katika ile njia akaenda kuishi katika tumbo la mama yake.
Wakati mwanadamu anapoumbwa katika tumbo la mamake, basi malaika Jibril hutumwa na kuweza kumtajia jinsi maisha yake yatakavyokuwa. jinsi atapopata riski na pia jinsi maisha yake atakavyokuwa, iwapo atapata furaha na amani ama iwapo atakuwa na mitihani kadhaa katika maisha yake.
Welcome back. You're watching the Prime Edition. New Life Church leader Pastor Ezekiel Odero will have to wait a little longer to know the fate on his application on his frozen accounts.
This is after the court directed that the application by Pastor Ezekiel Odero seeking to vacate the orders that froze his bank accounts to be heard tomorrow morning.
Trial Magistrate Ben Mac Ekubi gave the prosecuting counsel until tomorrow to have filed a response to the application filed by Pastor Odero's legal team.
The team of lawyers representing Pastor Ezekiel Odero of New Life Church had a busy day Thursday as they sought to have their client accounts unfrozen after the deadline lapsed at 5 p.m.
Today we are not very agitated as we were the last time. We toned down, and in the spirit of having a win-win, that is why we engaged.
Any other application filed is dead on arrival. Because the orders are dying in a few hours.
In the application by televangelists lawyers Dunstan Omari, Sam Nyaberi, Cliff Fombeta, Shadrach Wambui and Martina Swiga have sought that their client be given access to 3 bank accounts.
So really, whichever way we want to look at it, we do not have good faith in the manner these things have been conducted, and there is no cause for the extension of that time.
The lawyers in making their case in court argued that the state prosecutor has been deliberate to link Ezekiel to Mackenzie and the Shakahola killings.
Let us go back to what they're supposed to do after they get those warrants, to search, to make copies, to do all that. Have they filed returns to this court, Your Honor?
However, the prosecution has filed a preliminary objection to the application.
It has come as a surprise to me that we argue the application. There is no law that says that once I have filed the preliminary objection and grounds of opposition, I should not put in a reply. They are sufficient. The interested party should not bully the prosecution.
Which trial magistrate Ben Makehobe directed that it will be heard concurrently tomorrow and the court to make a determination.
We argue everything tomorrow, but I think I've extended that hand to the learned prosecutor to respond so that we exhaust, this entire, because it's a miscellaneous application, it's not a substantive, it's not a substantive suit.
Elsewhere, the office of the DPP has dropped charges on Mugithi star Lawrence Njuguna, alias DJ Fatso, which had linked him to the murder of his friend Jeff Mwathi.
The essence of these findings from the DCI was that they did not find an iota of culpability.
The DPP has consequently referred the matter to inquest. Mwathi died on February 22nd at the home of DJ Fatso in Kasarani in what was initially said to be suicide. Ruth Wamboi for Prime Edition.
A turn of events in that DJ Fatso story.
I'm sure it's not going to sit with the majority of Kenyans who had already, judged and prosecuted the case on our social media platforms.
All right, let's take you to one of the big stories tonight. The Kenya Bureau of Standards Managing Director, Bernard Njiraini, is among 26 officials suspended for releasing counterfeit sugar condemned in 2018 to the market.
A statement from the head of public service, Felix Koskei, says the suspended officers were involved in releasing 20,000 bags that were found to be unfit for human consumption to the market.
Officers drawn from the Kenya Revenue Authority, Kenya Police, KEBS and the Agriculture and Food Authority have been suspended for releasing adulterated sugar. Many of the 26 officers are accused of releasing 20,000 bags of 50 kg of the condemned sugar to the market, even as the sweetener was earmarked for conversion into industrial ethanol. The sugar was approved for destruction by the KEBS National Standards Council in 2018. KEBS Managing Director Bernard Njiraini and 6 top officials in the agency are among the casualties. Those also suspended include George Mithamo from the National Police Service, Bernard Ngombi from the DCI, and 8 officials from the KRA. The officers have also been accused of breaching the open and competitive process in a listing of distillers and aiding tax evasion during the release of the sugar. Benson Droba reporting for Prime Edition.
And you remember that sugar was actually a subject of parliamentary investigation.
Indeed.
And I think the committee then was led by the now Iala Member of Parliament, that is Kanin Kera.
Can I just do a sample of what we were saying behind the scenes? Just tunaweza sema sukari imewaramba.
What happens when a gang abducts the wrong target and on a ransom mission?
This is a question posed in the film Mistaken Identity, produced by KCA students.
Here now is the review of a film on tonight's episode of Cinemas and Theatre.
Mission mkiblanda walai bilai mtakipata.
Mistaken Identity follows the character Gun, recruited to do debt collection for a criminal gang. On a mission, he is instructed to abduct a girl from school for ransom. Unfortunately, he grabs the wrong one.
The last time I saw Celine, she was walking towards the gate.
When at the compound of the gang leader, he refuses to give her up with the claim that she wasn't meant to suffer. This is informed by his childhood memories of his mother's death.
Mom! I have a certain way in how I write my scripts. But sasa nikaona, how about I try something new? Nikaangalia, what can I try? Nikaona crime, nikaona also action. And then these are many themes that are not really popular in Kenya. Nikasema, let me play around that. So nikasema, hiyo idea Mistaken Identity ilikuwa imekujanga tu nikiwatch movie ingine. I was like, it would be nice if I come up with a story, but now Kenyanize it and make sure it has what our people have.
Mistaken Identity is a film by students drawn from KCA University.
I do have a few actors that I have worked with in other projects. So half of the cast was typecasted, meaning hizo roles ziliandikiwa that person. They are really nice. They were obedient. Yeah, wali cooperate. So you still have the voice.
Directed by Fabi Grace, she notes despite the production challenges, it was an educative encounter working with her classmates on the project.
Location scouting was one of the hectics. We walked. We tarmacked this Nairobi tukitafutana na zile manyumba zenye tulikuwa tunaingia, apparently they were owned by big organizations, so you can just come in and start shooting. I remember by that week of location scouting, watu walikuwa wanasema, hey, we have to change the script because sasa kama tupati place ya kushoot hatuwezi endelea.
Rolling. Okay, Bardin.
Send that shot one, take one.
Driven by passion for filming, the whole production was a team effort with all funds from own contribution.
Tulichanga tu kama watu wa class peke yetu, and then after wamechanga, our producer Decima felt the need to, if she's the producer and the end, ataenda atafute pesa. So akaenda akatafuta pesa, and that's how we got the money to do pre-production and production. And also for the premiere and post-production, bado tulichanga. So it was just a team effort. Finding ways on how we as artists tunaweza pata revenue from our craft. I feel like that is an issue and imekuwa ikibother the generations that were before us. Now, as far as film imekuja sahi, they can be able to get money for their craft na waweze ku earn a living.
Uliambiwa ulete Daisy na clearly usi Daisy.
Oh my God.
Gunn decides to fight for the life of the abducted girl, no matter the cost. However, he is captured and brought to his boss to face the consequences. Will he succeed in his mission? Jacqueline Manyara for Cinemas and Theatre.
Ili kupata sikiza tune hii ya usini record, bonyeza *811*396#.
Unakata pia kabaya Wakenya mnakuanga nako ya kuweka mtu kwa speaker alafu mnarekodi sauti yake bila ruhusa. Nikipata sauti yangu ina trend huko nje na kuna pesa napata, mtajua mimi mlu yako na lawyer na sina lawyer binadamu. Usini record.
Ili kupata sikiza tune hii usini record, bonyeza *811*396#.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Francis Otieno. Nimetoka pale Kayole, Matopeni hapo Spring Valley. Nimekuwa nikicheza loto na kama jinsi ambavyo mumeona siku ya leo nimekuwa mmoja wa washindi. Ninaweza penda kuwahimiza, Loto Moto ni ukweli, jaribu hata wewe. Inaweza kuwa siku yako imefika kama vile yangu imefika.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
Colgate Herbal is formulated from a unique blend of natural herbs and is scientifically proven to strengthen teeth and keep gums healthy. Try Colgate Herbal, scientifically proven for strong teeth and healthy gums.
Well, it's that very time. We need to hand over to the young lady. She's back. Time for business now. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kioria and Regina. There, time to get the latest in the world of business. My name is Betty Kiptum. Now, it's bad news for Kenyans as sugar prices will remain high in the coming weeks as Kenya grapples with low production and the high cost of the sweetener in the international market. Sugar Directorate Director Jude Chesira says weekly optimal stock of sugar has dropped by 80%, creating a deficit that he predicts will last up to a month. The retail price of sugar has jumped from an average of 320 to 420 shillings for a packet of 2 kilograms.
This week, the price of sugar increased 31%, retailing at a historical high of 420 shillings per 2 kg packet. The Sugar Directorate says the record-breaking high prices are a result of reduced cane stocks at farms and scarcity of the commodity both in the Comesa region, Kenya's traditional sugar import market, and globally. This has seen the landing cost of sugar increase to 121,000 shillings, up from 85,000 per ton. The Sugar Directorate Director Jude Chesire says the high prices will persist as the country has only 4,000 metric tons of sugar this week, against the required 20,000 tons.
Available is around 4,100. Yeah. Of course, we've been doing about 20,000.
The Directorate says the sweetener's high prices might last for a month, when Eswatini, Mauritius, and Zambia are expected to start harvesting their cane.
We are expecting that in another 1 month or so, we should start allowing some Comesa sugar to come into our market, because their production by then will have started.
However, the harvest season in the three countries might not automatically translate to cheaper sugar in Kenya, as the countries might opt to sell their products in Europe, where the demand for brown sugar is high.
We have sugarcane somewhere in the high seas or somewhere near the port or somewhere, at the port of export, just waiting for some clearances. I would think we should allow the minister, the government should allow the minister concerned to waive the duty.
The directorate is warning sugar processors against processing immature crop to show up production, as it will affect the next season harvest, further compounding the sugar shortage.
Having experiences of some millers harvesting young cane, so if they're able to not necessarily stop but scale down their production to allow the cane to grow, then that means we will have our local production will go up.
Sugar stakeholders are also urging millers to release all their stocks to cushion Kenyans against the high prices of the commodity.
To focus on mopping out the cane from the factories, and also allowing, or rather asking the factories to not necessarily focus on their traditional areas.
Benson Ruba reporting for Prime Edition.
Well, tough times indeed. Now, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has promised government support for key projects to boost the country's blue economy. Gachagua says the Kenya Kwanza administration will work with the European Union and coastal counties to unlock the potential of the blue economy sector.
Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, flanked by several top national and county government leaders, were at Mudhu Nyali Beach Hotel in Mombasa County for the launch of fishing boats acquired in partnership with the European Union under the Go Blue project. While here, the Deputy President said the government is ready to provide resources and requisite support to ensure the success of the blue economy.
Governors, once more I want to assure you of the support of the President and I, and indeed the rest of the national government, to support devolution, to support your activities, so that we all work together because we serve the same people.
As fishermen, we are really looking forward to the implementation of that, so that we can be able to benefit more from the blue bodies.
We equally need to look at all other challenges that have been there over the past period of time and see how we can be able to convert those challenges into opportunities, to see what it is that was done by previous administrations, how we can be able to do things in a better, more efficient way.
Kenya has welcomed the partnership with the European Union and the coastal counties on the Go Blue project, saying it was bound to improve the nation's fortunes in the fishing sector.
This project is undertaking aimed at accelerating sustained, inclusive and sustainable economic urban coastal growth. This is an important component in job creation, especially for the youth and women through skills and value chain development. This is by enhancing maritime governance through integrated and effective law enforcement. It will contribute to the regional and global security and create a favorable environment for economic development.
The provision of these boats will go a long way in addressing some of these challenges by enabling our fishermen to access fishing grounds that were previously out of reach, and also increase the number of fishermen having access to own boats, thus improving standards of living.
From Mombasa County, I am Ann Mburu.
And Kenya has received 70 billion shillings from the World Bank for the Digital Economy Acceleration Project that aims to expand access to high-speed internet, improve the quality and delivery of education and selected government services. Here is Regina Manyara with the details.
The Digital Economy Acceleration Project, whose lifeline expires in 7 years, focuses on building a data-driven and secure environment for enhanced delivery and innovation.
This is an ambitious agenda, ladies and gentlemen, that cannot be left to the government alone. In fact, in our proposition, we advise that government will only be able to attain a threshold of about 52% of all our initiatives across the board within the digital space, and then we leave the remaining 48% to the private sector. So what I'm saying is that it is imperative that we partner with the private sector if we are to realize our digitalization.
Owalo says the government has been actively engaging diverse stakeholders in the ICT and manufacturing sectors on the prospects of producing low-cost smartphones and lowering data costs.
I'm pleased to inform you that out of the envisaged 100,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable. We have already embarked on that journey in earnest. We have gotten funding from the Universal Service Fund, which is domiciled within the ambit of the Communications Authority. We have gotten another additional funding from the World Bank under the Kenya Digital Economy Acceleration Program. So we are good to go.
Through the government digital transformation agenda, the state seeks to digitize government services, support last-mile fiber connectivity, set up 25,000 Wi-Fi hotspots and ICT hubs, all wards across the country. Regina Manyara reporting for Prime Edition.
Now, would you take milk from plants? The milk aisle in your local convenience store is getting crowded with varieties. The section has for the longest time been dominated by cow and goat milk. But in the last 5 years, plant-based milk is gaining popularity the world over, and Kenya has not been left behind. The local market has seen the entry of Danone and Biofoods selling plant-based milk. Now, the market is expected to heat up following the entry of Ruiru-based milk processor Brookside Dairy, as Pauline Kihali reports.
Historically, cow, goat and camel milk have dominated the milk market, but with the growth of health-conscious consumers, ethical concerns and environmental issues, an alternative has been in the offing. Plant-based alternative milk from soya, almonds, macadamia nuts, coconut, among others, has been fighting for a space on the breakfast table with growing success. In Kenya, the market is dominated by French food giants Danone and Biofoods. And now the country's largest milk processor, Brookside Dairy, is venturing into this niche market.
Our plant-based range encompasses Brookside almond milk and almond soya milk. Brookside soya milk, which are free, dairy-free, gluten-free, and lactose-free protein-packed drinks processed with wholesome ingredients.
The company has become the latest food processor angling for a piece of plant-based milk market. The company is pioneering the plant-based dairy products market with the almond and soy milk variants as it trains its eyes on a growing wellness-conscious population.
Brookside almond milk is highly beneficial for you because it is rich in vitamin E, an important antioxidant that supports a healthy heart. The expansion of our product portfolio also benefits over 200,000 farmers across East Africa.
In addition, Brookside has undertaken a major upgrade of its milk collection and processing infrastructure as it seeks to consolidate the local market. Pauline Kihali for Prime Edition.
Well, I am yet to try plant milk, but I love almonds, so maybe, just maybe. Now, investor appetite in the real estate sector in Kenya has risen as inflation, currency depreciation and other economic pressures rock other investment options. Players say both local and foreign high net worth individuals are preferring property ownership to cushion their investments. Ndotamu Kami with the details.
Kenya has been a victim of reduced appetite for Africa's capital markets, with foreign investors fleeing Kenya's stock market. Data from the Capital Markets Authority shows that in March, the Nairobi Securities Exchange recorded a 6-year low of 30.1% in foreign investment. The trend has, however, not been witnessed in the real estate sector, with property investment continuing to blossom. Investors are choosing real estate to provide a hedge against inflation, currency depreciation, and other economic risks.
A lot of those assets have made their money a few times over, and owners need to invest a little bit of capex into those assets to then breathe a second life into them.
Additionally, they say property developers are focusing on green funding that will limit future risks and provide capital to users who undertake sustainable construction.
It's about climate change. It's also about affordability of the unit. And you start to see when you start to introduce green elements, at least, into your developments, there's a saving to the end user.
They also resolve to diversify the country's property market through emerging trends in development and innovation.
Buy Kenya, build Kenya, a slogan that has increasingly become popular even as real estate investors push for current investments in the country. Reporting for Prime Edition, my name is Nduta Lokami.
Thank you, Nduta, for that report. Now, National Assembly Trade Committee is uncomfortable with allocating 4.7 billion shillings to construction of county collection centres for farm products as proposed by the Ministry of Trade. The MPs instead want the Moses Kuria-led ministry to prioritise installing infrastructure to open up special economic zones to attract investors.
The Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry appeared before the National Assembly Trade Committee to defend its budget for the 2023-2024 financial year. Cabinet Secretary Moses Kuria lobbying for allocation of 4.7 billion shillings for construction of county aggregation centres, saying it will bring industrialization closer to all Kenyans.
Even as we look at industrialization and job creation from the top, let us look at how we can be able to do this also from the bottom of the pyramid. So that, as we say where I come from, Kitunguu ikinuka Garissa, pia inuke Mombasa, na inuke Busia, so that we can be able to do things from all corners of the country.
We also require for us to really get work going in these counties, that we will need about 200 million for coordination and also to do common designs, as we would not want each county to go doing their own architectural designs.
The Ministry of Trade has entered an agreement with county governments to set up an aggregation centre for farm products in each county at a cost of 500 million shillings. Each county is supposed to contribute 250 million shillings and 100 acres of land, while the national government will complement with another 250 million shillings.
We have, I don't know how many counties, 12 counties, which we can't even wait. They have put together money in the supplementary budget of the year we are ending, because it's not many that go.
But the Trade Committee is unwilling to allocate monies for aggregation centres and instead wants the ministry to prioritise installing crucial infrastructure within the special economic zones to attract investors.
We need to know the 250 Kenya shillings. What is it for? What does it stand for? Is it to construct sheds, or what is it meant for?
We already have a problem. Why do you want to get yourself into more problems? You already have that money. Why can't you use that money to sort yourselves out? Because counties will get their own money through their division of revenue. That is their function. Their function is markets.
And you can see the tone of our members. We are fair and comfortable. We do not pay the exchange value for money for their 4.7 billion.
The construction of aggregation centres is set to be installed in 2 phases, the first one covering 18 counties in the next financial year. The idea of putting up aggregation centres in all the 47 counties aims at reducing post-harvest losses and thereby enhancing food security. The decision on whether the idea will be realised now lies with Parliament that is making the budget. Vishoki Washira, Prime Edition.
And that's the business news this evening. But of course, don't forget the conversation on the finance bill will be coming up later with members of Parliament, Geoffrey Ruku, member of Parliament of Mbeere North, and Peter Kihungi, member of Parliament in Kangema. That conversation will be coming up a bit later. Let's give you the international business news. Black Americans are significantly more likely to be subjected to tax investigations, the Internal Revenue Service has admitted. IRS Commissioner Daniel Waffel said in a letter to the U.S. Senate that recent research indicates that black taxpayers are between 3 and 5 times more likely to be audited, adding that he was deeply concerned by the disparity. Details of these and more in stories making headlines across the world.
U.S. lawmakers have called on the IRS to review its auditing processes. A recent study from economists at Stanford University found that black taxpayers were more likely to be signaled out for an audit than non-black taxpayers. Although the IRS does not collect information about race on tax documents, Daniel Ho, the paper's co-author, said that the disparity still exists. This is partially because the agency currently focuses more resources on auditing those who claim refundable tax credits rather than going after high-income taxpayers with more complicated returns. Wafal told lawmakers the agency was looking into whether changing its approach to audits would reduce the disproportionate impact on low-income black families. Elsewhere, China's housing market continued to remain stable in April, with home prices in 70 large and medium-sized cities showing moderate month-on-month increases, down from 64 in March. New home prices in 4 fast-tier cities of Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen and Guangzhou rose by 0.4% month-on-month in April, 0.1% points higher than in March. In the 4 cities, resale home prices rose 0.2% month-on-month, 0.3% points lower than the previous month. A total of 31 second-tier cities saw a month-on-month increase of 0.4% in new home prices, while 35 third-tier cities witnessed a month-on-month rise of 0.2% in new home prices last month. The resale home prices remained flat in the second and third-tier cities. Finally, one of the world's biggest car makers has called on the UK government to renegotiate part of the Brexit deal or risk losing parts of its car industry. Stellantis, which owns Vauxhall, Peugeot, Citroën and Fiat, had committed to making electric cars in the UK, but it says that it is under threat. It said it can no longer meet Brexit trade rules on where parts are sourced. Stellantis said if the cost of electric vehicle manufacturing in the UK becomes uncompetitive and unsustainable, operations will close. It called on the government to come to an agreement with the EU to keep rules as they are until 2023, and it also wants arrangements for manufacturing parts in Serbia and Morocco to be reviewed.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina naitwa Irene Dunge, ama business lady. Nafanyanga biashara hapa Adams. Loto Moto is real. Msiogope kucheza. Muendelee kucheza, mtawin. Kuna a lot of stuffs zenye unaweza win. Kuna cash. So it's a good experience. Nimejishindia 8,000. Nashukuru sana.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2,000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
And that's all we had for you on the business desk this evening. Of course, Daniel Wahome will be coming right up with the latest in the world of sports. My name is Betty Kiptum. See you tomorrow. Good night.
Nafasi yako ya kuwa mdosi wako. Jiunge na washindi tufanye biashara. Kuwa mshindi. Mozartbet.
Swala zote na sanamu zimfikie Hashimu.
Na ndio maana wale wengine wasiokuwa na imani na Mwenyezi Mungu huamini baadhi ya sehemu bara zingine, huamini kuwa sehemu kubwa ya Mungu mkubwa ni sehemu alikozalika kwa mama yake, kwa sababu akiwa na itikadi kuwa baada ya kuzalika akaweza kuishi katika dunia hii, hawezi kupita tena katika ile njia akaenda kuishi katika tumbo la mama yake.
Wakati mwanadamu anapoumbwa katika tumbo la mamake, basi malaika Jibril hutumwa na kuweza kumtajia jinsi maisha yake yatakavyokuwa, jinsi atapopata riski, na pia jinsi maisha yake yatakavyokuwa, iwapo atapata furaha na amani ama iwapo atakuwa na mitihani kadhaa katika maisha yake.
The Mozart Bet Cup enters the semi-finals this weekend as the remaining 4 teams battle for the ultimate prize of representing the country in CAF Confederations Cup. Tusker FC will lock horns with Ulinzi Stars from 12 p.m. while the much-awaited Ingo Derby pitting Kakamega Homeboys and AFC Leopards will kick off at 3 p.m. Catch all the action live on KBC Channel 1 from Nyayo National Stadium. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.
Sports News is brought to you by Mozart Bet.
Kurumisha ndege. Aviator instant game. Be a daring pilot and earn by how much high you can lift the plane. The higher you fly, the higher your win. The sky is the limit. Mozart Bet.
A very good evening to you. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Prime Edition Sport. The Kenya Ports Authority men's volleyball team are through to the quarterfinals of the ongoing 2023 Africa Men's Volleyball Club Championship after seeing off CNS of Nigeria by 3-1 in Tunisia. The Sami Mulinga-led Chargers grabbed the first set 25-18 before losing the second set 25-17. KPA won the third set and the fourth set 25-21 and 25-22 respectively. After the result, CNS will now play classification matches. KPA are Kenya's sole representatives at the Continental Showpiece. KPA finished 5th overall in the last edition of the Africa Men's Volleyball Club Championship held last year in Kalibia, Tunisia. And world 10-kilometer record holder Ronex Kipruto has provisionally been suspended by the Athletics Integrity Unit for suspected use of a prohibited substance. In a statement released Wednesday, the AIU said the 2018 World Under 20 10,000 meter champion has been notified on a charge relating to irregularities in his athlete biological passport. His suspension comes a day after another Kenyan, Nicholas Kosimbei, was suspended over the use of a prohibited substance. If found guilty, Kipruto faces a 4-year ban. And the stage is set for a thrilling clash as AFC Leopards and Kakamega Homeboys lock horns in the Mozart Bet Cup semi-final knockout game on Saturday at the Moi International Sports Centre Kasarani. In the other semi-final clash at the same venue, Tusker will go head-to-head against Ulinzi Stars. The matches will be beamed live on KBC Channel 1 and 6 KBC radio stations.
Dubbed the Ingwe Derby, the encounter pitting AFC Leopards against Kakamega Homeboys promises to be a closely contested affair. Both teams have their eyes on the prize, as winning the cup competition not only brings glory, but also opens the door to participate in the CAF Confederation Cup. AFC Leopards coach Patrick Ausims highlighted the importance of the match, stating they have a great chance to win a trophy and secure qualification for continental football.
Now 3 weeks that we are preparing for this semi-final, even against Zoya, against Ulinzi, it was to I would say to focus all the players on this semi-final. You know, this semi-final, can you give the chance and the opportunity to go in final? And it's the shortest way to play continental, you know. So that's why for the league, we cannot accept anything anymore.
Aware of the threat posed by AFC Leopards, Kakamega Homeboys coach Patrick Odhiambo remains confident in his team's abilities.
Nadhani tunazidi kujiandaa vizuri, tunajizidi kuangalia zile areas ambapo tumekuwa na upungufu kidogo. Ukiangalia mechi mbili zilizopita tumefungwa, so we are just trying to work around hizo nini areas ili tuweze kupata positive results.
In other semi-final clash, Tusker will go head-to-head against Ulinzi Stars. The two semi-final matches will be beamed live on KBC Channel 1. Reporting for Prime Edition, I'm Sela Onyango.
Thank you, Salah, for that story. And remember that if you'll be on the road, you can listen to Radio Taifa, the English service, Ingo FM, Mayenga FM, Minto FM, and if you're down at the coast, Pwani FM, all powered by Mozart Bet. And that's the sport for tonight, but we just need to tell you who's going to face Inter Milan in the UEFA Champions League final. That 1-0 win over AC Milan, 1-0 guaranteed them a 3-0 aggregate victory. And tonight, Manchester City host Real Madrid. They're tied 1-1 from the first leg. It's a off time. Well, that's the sport for tonight, and it's been a pleasure hosting you. See you tomorrow evening. And coming up next is John Jacob Kioria, and he's going to be hosting Honorable Jeffrey Ruku, who's the MP for Mbeere North, and Honorable Peter Kihongi, who's the MP for Kangema. And we're all talking about the cost of living, and this is through the finance bill. That's coming up after this break.
Sports News was brought to you by Mozart Bet.
Nafasi yako ya kuwa mdosi wako. Jiunge na washindi tufanye biashara. Kuwa mshindi. Mozart Bet.
Unataka kusema ujui sisi ni akina nani?
Ni kama sikukumbuki.
Tiffany, sio wewe.
What are you talking about? Mama Paul hajakwambia.
Please, if you find her, tell her Joel is normal.
I pray that God gives you and the rest of the family the strength to pull through this.
But I just want you to know we are in this together.
Amen. Amen.
Is it something that will get me in trouble?
It's the second time I'm getting this question today.
I hope you're not trying to show them that you can be a better daughter-in-law. Really, Gasheri?
Thank you, but your services are no longer needed here.
Unajua mimi hata naweza endelea na job yangu ya content creation. Is that even a career?
Huyu ni kichwa ngumu huyu.
Swala zote na sanamu zimfikie Hashimu.
Na ndio maana wale wengine wasiokuwa na imani na Mwenyezi Mungu huamini baadhi ya sehemu bara zingine, huamini kuwa sehemu kubwa ya Mungu mkubwa ni sehemu alikozalika kwa mama yake, kwa sababu akiwa na itikadi kuwa baada ya kuzalika akaweza kuishi katika dunia hii, hawezi kupita tena katika ile njia akaenda kuishi katika tumbo la mama yake.
Wakati mwanadamu anapoumbwa katika tumbo la mamake, basi malaika Jibril hutumwa na kuweza kumtajia jinsi maisha yake yatakavyokuwa, jinsi atapopata riski, na pia jinsi maisha yake yatakavyokuwa, iwapo atapata furaha na amani ama iwapo atakuwa na mitihani kadhaa katika maisha yake.
Is the new finance bill or the proposed finance bill meant to overburden Kenyans or save them from the economic vagaries? That's a big question tonight. President William Ruto has defended the proposed finance bill and the contents therein. And who better to speak to than two members of parliament drawn from Kenya Kwanza, the people you would say they are trusted with this bill by President William Ruto. What lies in wait? That is a big question tonight. We speak to the Member of Parliament for Kangema, Peter Kihungi, as well as Geoffrey Ruku, the Member of Parliament for Mbeere North. Karibuni sana. Both of you are welcome.
Thank you so much.
Asanteni sana. The 20th, Mheshimiwa Geoffrey, is when public participation comes to an end on the proposed finance bill. Mm-hmm. We have had the leader, actually the majority whip in the National Assembly say, hakuna bili ya serikali inaanguka. My question is there a need then for public participation if this bill is going to be enacted as is?
Yes, public participation is a very key component in our constitution. That every bill or every law registered by the parliament must go through the public participation. The views of the public are extremely paramount as far as the law-making process or registration process is concerned. So the views of Kenyans are important so that the parliament can be able to enrich the content of finance bill, but at the same time it give a platform to educate Kenyans on what the bill is exactly, what it means. Because one of the responsibilities of the opposition is to rapish, is to say, what comes from government is extremely bad. And because Kenyans are facing challenges, and one of the aims of this finance bill is to uplift, is to be able to solve the challenges which Kenyans are facing in the long term. It may not be in the short term, but in the long term. Because we cannot be speaking of the same problems year in, year out. We must find a way, and any responsible government must be in a position to find a solution for long term on the challenges which the citizens are facing. And through this finance bill, the government is trying to address some of these challenges in long term.
We'll talk about the challenges and in long term. But Mheshimiwa Kihonge, when your leader in the National Assembly says hakuna bili ya serikali inaanguka, question is, this public participation, is it an exercise in futility, so much so that, okay, letani maoni, but that's just the end of it?
Now, mine is just to say that I don't know what he meant when he said that there is no bill in government that cannot go through. But on reality, one of the things that has happened in this country that has never happened is when the sitting president come to explain finance bill. That shows that he won't work with the people with the bill. And he took time. I watched the whole thing, it took more than 3 hours. He wanted to make Kenyans understand the bill before even it goes to them, so that they can be able to make their input. Therefore, whatever the whip said, we should not take it seriously. But the most critical part is how a sitting president took time to explain a finance bill, which has never happened. And therefore, it shows that the president wants, before it passes, Kenyans must be convinced. What we must understand is that the finance bill might be somehow unpopular because we are in an economic crisis worldwide. Everywhere, even when you get to America, you find the sitting president is on a crisis on inflation. That's why he is having a problem with going for the second term. But this is the first budget for President William Ruto. Now he comes out with the reality in the country. We must agree that we took a government when the economy was critically in crisis. Therefore, we must think on how we are coming out of it. Now, the previous government, what they did, they had a borrowing opportunity, whereby they moved from 4 trillion to 9 trillion, around 9.8 trillion. Now, whenever there was a crisis, they moved to borrowing. Now, the current president says we have only an option of borrowing 200 billion. We can also exploit that. We must see how we can make an internal budget that has, we control the deficit. But as we control the deficit, we see how we can be able to build our economy. Therefore, what I'm saying is that the issues that have been raised on housing, the issue of raised on the taxes, we must agree. Like Singapore, when it came to when it moved from third world now to first world, the first step they did was to work on the issue of unemployment. Therefore, the concept of housing is one of the best concepts the president has. But how do we implement it without now involving the issue of borrowing?
Let me cut you short, because we'll talk a bit about the 3% levy on housing. But Mheshimiwa, the pre-election pledges of President William Ruto, that we shall ease the cost of living, faulting even the previous government on the commodity prices, the fuel prices. Question is it a departure? This proposals in the finance bill, is it a departure from the promises of a president, or is it getting to a situation where you're now confronted with the reality vis-a-vis when he was out there campaigning? Mheshimiwa.
There are about more than 15 areas where there is tax exemption proposed by the finance bill. And this is, the myth that the media is not telling Kenyans. There are quite a number of areas where the taxes have been exempted, completely zero-rated And we used to have those taxes. And I can give you an example. For instance, import declaration fees on gas is completely removed so that we can be able to lower the cost of consumption of gas. And you know, Kenyans use gas, in a very ranch scale manner. There is a complete removal, exemption of VAT as far as manufacturing of fertilizers, materials, bringing materials which manufacture fertilizers in Kenya is completely zero rated. That means anybody who want to manufacture fertilizer in Kenya will be able to do it in a cheaper manner. There is also a complete exception of VAT on pharmaceutical product. If you want to manufacture, we bought serious amount of pharmaceutical product from India. India manufactures a pharmaceutical product. How come that we, as a nation, as an economy, we cannot be able to manufacture some of these drugs? Drugs which cost 5 bob, Kenyan shilling, in a number of supermarkets, in a number of chemists in our town. We should be able to build capacity for the Kenyan companies which are able to manufacture pharmaceuticals product. That's why Kenya Kwanza government, through the president, has completely zero-rated the importation of product which are used to manufacture pharmaceutical product. VAT on export of tea is completely zero-rated. We need to improve, the amount of tea to increase the tonnage we export tea to other parts of the world. Tea is one of the very critical or important foreign exchange earner for our nation. But we have always been adding VAT to the exporting processes of our tea. So this government has zero-rated or has removed the VAT on exportation of tea, so that we can be able to earn more as a nation, okay, when we are importing tea. So
those
William
are
Ruto,
the 15.
yeah, there are many. So William Ruto is not rallying Kenyans. It's only that the opposition and the people who are against the government, against the president, are out there saying how this finance bill is burdening the Kenyans, which is not true. Yes.
The people claiming, that Kenyans are being overburdened, it's outrightly out there. Even the president, in his own admission, he admits that Kenyans are really pressed by the cost of living. The weight is on their shoulders. How do you respond to those who say, Mheshimiwa, that you cannot get out of debt by overtaxing a people who are already feeling the weight of the cost of living?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's the truth. You can't get out of the debt by overtaxing by people who are worried by the debts. But we must face the reality. Because when the president came, he came to a government which had have taken loans by excess. Now, the other challenge was the government had overcommitted. That's where the fiscal discipline was nowhere, whereby a government can contract projects worth over $1 billion. Roads only, it was 900 billion, over and above the budget. You see, those are some of the realities that's down on you when you get to government and you find people who had no fiscal discipline. But now you have to have it. What I want to say is that the issue of taxing mostly is seen as if it's going to those who are in employment. But we have to say, we have to work together to build this country. Therefore, the issue of increase of taxing mostly on fuel, the president did put it very clearly. This issue has also been misused in the government earning because there are people who are paying 8%, there are people who are paying 16%. It has been misused to make the government lose a lot of money in its revenue. Therefore, the concept that has been taken by the opposition is mostly the aspect of taxing on the fuel. But the president did put it clear, whoever listened to him. He said, this thing has been misused. because somebody can claim that he is supposed to get to be taxed at 8%, but not at 16%, because there were two taxes at the same commodity. Therefore, he wanted to make sure the issue of revenue collection is to the maximum, because you can also maybe not tax people, but make the efficiency and maximization of revenue collection that cannot be able to help the government to be able to perform and implement the issue of growth that they are doing, mostly on education, mostly on employment, because also whenever you are taxing and also you are creating employment, you are making people able even to pay, because also the issue of tax mostly should be not looked on the issue of how much person is giving. Is to also be looked, is the government now assisting our people to make an earning? Whenever the government now gets money, it gives farmers fertilizer. Farmers go to the land, they produce, they earn. They are incapacitated to pay taxes. Whenever the government now start issues of housing, young people over 300,000 or 100,000 get employment. Those people are empowered to pay taxes. Therefore, the issue of tax, we can never run away from it. But as the president did put it in his interview, the issue of 8% and 16% was misused, and the government was losing a lot of money. And therefore, it was to balance, to maximize the issue of revenue collection.
We'll come back to you on the
I
housing.
think it's also important. It's also important to put it in perspective. When we say Kenyans are overtaxed, we don't live in isolation. We live in a community of nations, and in a community of nations, we are extremely interdependent. If you look at the tax revenue to GDP of Kenya vis-a-vis other nations in the world, and for instance, the African nations which are at par or almost at par with the Kenyan economy, because the Kenyan economy is one of top 5 economies in Africa, you realize that we are at 14% at the moment as far as tax revenue to GDP. If we compare ourselves with a country like South Africa, Botswana, Morocco, Lesotho, you realize they are way, above us. And what the finance bill is proposing, we only need to move Kenya from 13%, from 14% to 16%, 2% only. So that slowly we can see whether we can be close to other nations which are performing much better economically than ourselves. And remember, you get the product of what you pay for. You get the quality of life on what you spend. We expect to have good roads, good schools, good hospitals, good infrastructure, power in each and every home in our republic. We have to finance that. Either we borrow or we finance it ourselves. So how do we go about it? So somehow we must raise our tax revenue to GDP by a small margin of only 2%. And that 2% will translate to, at the moment, the revenue which we collect per year is about 2.2 trillion. 2%, it means we'll be able to collect, as a nation, 2.8 trillion. That means we can be able to finance the higher education costs of all universities we have, of all the TFETs we have, by the 2% margin. So that is huge. So that is something which we need to get as a nation. I want also to say that, if you look at the tax revenue to GDP of a country like France, like Germany, they are above 40%. France is at 45%. And we are at 14% at the moment. A country like Turkey is at 22%. We are at 14%.
Mheshimiwa, one will argue that situation is in France or in Turkey. We are confronted with our own local problems here.
And for us to get ourselves out of the problems we are having, we must come up with innovative ways of raising funds to take care of our environmental priorities.
All right, Mheshimiwa, I want you to talk about the 3% housing levy. Of course, by the employee, and then the employer contributes another 3%. It is what the opposition has called illegal borrowing. And when the president was speaking Sunday, he said it is not a tax. So if it is not a tax, why not allow the option of opting into the fund other than the mandatory deduction?
Okay, I think that's the government proposal that it has put, and I know it has raised a lot of issues, even from the working community, the people who are employed, and the government is still trying to justify. This is also a form of saving also, because you pay 3% and then the government contributes 3%. Now, whereby we might not also agree with the whip, the convincing proposals that will be raised by our people, because also the concept of housing, the way I want to put it, that's the intentions are very good. The intentions are the ones that open or make a country to be able to grow economically, because a country can never grow when there is the high unemployment or the nature this country is. And now the concept that the president has picked, because the big four had tried to work on manufacturing. It's as if manufacturing didn't work. I don't know why, maybe the previous administration did not be able to implement it. And therefore, with the wisdom, I think the president has zeroed on housing. And therefore, being his one of the areas that he want to turn around the economy by creation of employment. Because now when you start the concept of housing, like Kagema has been considered for housing, they're supposed to do around 300 housing. But the rad is there, it has been advertised. When that program starts, I know how many youth will be employed by that program. The program intention is for affordable housing, but on the other side is on the creation of employment, and also that concept whereby people will be now have areas to practice the issue of housing and working.
So the bigger picture here is employment.
The bigger picture is employment. Therefore, we'll wait for the proposals that the people are putting. We don't want to discourage the common mwananchi between today and Friday. Let them give us a proposal, but they will not kill the idea, because the idea is good. Let them give a clear proposal where we'll be able to move. Because if we kill this proposal, this country will not move. This is our country. We must try to see how we can be able to sacrifice for this country also. We might not think on how the government will do, because the government will go to borrowing. Now, how will we be able to build our country with the economy of borrowing? Therefore, that's why somehow I may not agree with the whip. The ideas that our people are giving, they are very important. And our Kenyans are people who think. They are very innovative. Therefore, I know they will come up with ideas that will be able to make us move with the idea, but also we don't seem as if we are antagonizing our people. But the president's intention is the concept of building the issue of employment and the concept of housing, and also building the practice of saving to our people. Therefore, I want to say that I think that's one of the major issues. We'll wait maybe the budget committee. I am not in the budget committee, but I think that's one of the hot issues that they will get from the proposal from the public. But I beg my people, don't wish it away, because it's a critical infrastructure that has changed some of the countries that we were in level in 1963, like Singapore. Let them improve it and look at on how we can be able to improvise it to be able to make our economy grow.
Mheshimiwa Ruku, think about it this way, and probably that's the argument that has been floated by Kenyans. Well, you forcing me to invest in a house, and probably I don't even need the house. But he said this money will be refunded after 7 years. With the experience that we have with bodies probably that take our statutory deductions, for example, NHIF, NSSF, and some of the experiences people have had with them, don't you understand why Kenyans probably feel like pulling back because of experiences they've had in the past?
It is important we as Kenyans to realize that the economic performance of every economy is measured using quite a number of parameters. One of the parameters is the saving ratio to GDP of a nation. And we compare the saving ratio to GDP of a nation vis-a-vis other nations in the world. At the moment, the saving ratio of Kenya to GDP is about 13.36%. On average, of all nations in the world, they average at about 23.8%, almost 24%.
So we're 10% behind.
So we are 10% behind. Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda, they are ahead of us as far as the saving ratio to GDP is concerned. So what is this as a prudent economic managers we should do? So we should find a way of raising our saving ratio to GDP to be closer to the average of other nations in the world. Why is it important for the nation to have that savings? It is important because you can be able to go back to your savings and borrow from your savings. You can be able to develop other financial derivatives around the savings which you have. The market of financial derivatives in Kenya, it is not yet developed. Any serious economy has financial derivatives. At the moment, I sit in the Committee of Delegate and Registration. Is the moment we are looking at financial derivative regulations forwarded to us by the Treasury, the Minister of Treasury, which means we still don't have a developed, well-developed financial market. So housing fund will really help in deepening our financial status of this Kenyan economy, because we can be able to develop a number of instruments around there, which in the long run will help this economy. So we need to explain to Kenyans in a clear terms. Kenyans may not understand what are these financial derivatives or what the instrument which we can develop around there. Kenyans may not understand the saving ratio to GDP, but we have competent economic managers. As managers who are looking at 10 years from now, housing fund is extremely critical. But at the same time, we're talking about 3%, and it is your money. That after 7 years, you can be able to go back and get your money 3 times of what you put in.
Does that include the 3% that my employer can?
Yes. Okay. That's why I'm talking about 3%. Because, I mean, more than 3 times, not 3%, more than 3 times.
So that means government will give me back 6%?
No. 3 times of what you have put in place. Because you put 3% of your whatever, then the employer puts 3%, then there is interest which this money will attract because of the financial instrument which will be developed.
Help me understand. If you're saying then that it is 3 times, you're saying simply, since I'm contributing 3% and the employer 3%, times 3, that means then that is 18%.
No. That's not the way I'm saying 3% is what you get deducted.
Yes.
Your employer also get deducted 3%.
Yeah.
Let's say it's a total of 10,000. That 10,000 after 10 years will be able to get interest because that money will be reinvested in many other forms. And those other many forms is the ones I've talked about, that there are financial derivatives which can be developed around that pool, okay? And we'll be able to rise from 13.37, our saving ratio to GDP, to a greater. That's even how the Kenyan economy will become more competitive. That's how the Kenyan banks we have will be highly rated. Just today, if you are getting a letter of credit so that you can be able to import different products from the other economies to this Kenya, to this economy, you'll be required that letter of credit to be confirmed by another bank outside there. Why? Because our banks are not properly entrenched. They are not trusted. Why are they trusted? Because our saving ratio to GDP is at 13.3. So we need to raise it so that we may not be incurring more cost for confirmation of letters of credit when we are doing our trade. So it's extremely critical for us to take that direction. The President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto, is thinking and acting in the most appropriate and prudent manner to ensure this economy will not be the way it is in another 10 years.
Mheshimiwa Ruko talks about, the problems we have in terms of tax collection and the deficits we have, and obviously saying the only solution we have is to improve from 14% to 16% in terms of tax. Question is, there are those who feel that there's too much wastage in government, that if these loopholes are sealed, corruption and wastage, it would actually bridge this gap, Mheshimiwa.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true, and I think I want to thank His Excellency the President because of the action he has taken on KEMSA. Because that's the most intense. Kenyans are watching. Kenya just want to believe that this government will not tolerate corruption. And I think the action they took on the issue to do with KEMSA, whereby they paid around 3.7 billion. Furthermore, I think it was not yet paid. It was in the process, but the PS was sacked. I think one of the most important things that the government should do, and I think should continually work on, is the issue of corruption. Because no economy can grow when corruption thrives. And therefore, one thing I think to assure Kenyans, the intention the president has shown from the onset is that he wants to create an economy for this country. He wants to prove himself. And chances are those who are in government will have it a very rough time whenever they think they can be able, he can tolerate corruption. Therefore, the action he has taken on KEMSA, I'm praying that that should be a warning shot for everybody, that this government will not tolerate corruption. The issue of spending, even as members of parliament, we are going through also cuts in this finance bill. Therefore, it's going across the country. It's going across everybody. The president, when he came to power, he paralyzed all international travels, mostly in government. Therefore, I think austerity measures will be implemented at our budget. Because the previous budget, we cannot be able to improve to work on the austerity measures of savings on government spending. But I think the intention the president has is to make sure that there is zero tolerance of corruption, and also the issue of government spending to be curtailed, so that we can make good savings, mostly on issues to do with government savings. And also that's why we are looking at, and that was a proposal from the budget committee, and I don't know whether it will work. There are some parastatals that we need to do away with, mostly these regional bodies. You find these regional bodies are doing the work the county governments are doing. They were there just to before the counter came. Therefore, we must work on it also. Also, one of the areas I think the government should work on. The government is suffering whenever it's working on revenue collection in the national level. The counties, nobody is asking, where did the money go? Because local authority used to pay their workers, used to do projects without even government funding. Now the government is doing 380 billion to the counties, and the counties cannot pay their staff. Those staff were used to be paid by local authorities who never received anything from the national government.
But then healthcare was not devolved then?
The healthcare now was devolved the resources. The healthcare was devolved the resources. Those are the resources that are getting there. Because the devolution on healthcare went with the resources. Now, the issue first, mostly, we can even move away from development. Just paying workers. Nobody was devolved from the national government. They were given, they work with the staff that were in local authorities, and those who were absorbed by from the national government, they were devolved with their resources. But now you can find that the county government cannot be able to pay. We must be very strict also on where is the revenue going. Because also, the county government also should not be burdened to the national government, because we might be also looking at the government at Kebake ran, where there were no county governments. But we must understand this government has an extra role to run county government. The county government which had the responsibility to collect revenue, but the revenue on county government is a question. If they can't pay salaries, because we thought that the county government will devolve development, but not personnel. But now we are all the governors are up in arms. We can't pay. We are not supposed to develop. They were not employment bureau, because that's what they have become. Every governor is coming with staff, and therefore they have become a burden to the national government. Because if we want to build this economy, we must build it as a whole. The county government must play their bigger role, because they must also improve on agriculture. Because the government should not do on agriculture wholesomely. The resources the government is devolving, the county government should be seen working on agriculture wherever now the national government supports. Therefore, I think also as we do it on that, we must look also on the issues of revenue collection, mostly in the county governments.
You're talking about own source revenue. Mheshimiwa Ruko, as you talk about issues like corruption, and President William Ruto has demonstrated probably knack to deal with corruption. Today he's the suspension of Bernard Njiraine from KEBS and a few officials, including from the DCI and the National Police. But question is, when it comes to wastage, is the Kenya Kwanza administration walking the talk when it comes to dealing with wastage?
Before I come to that, there's something else I want to put in also in perspective, that the 35% of pay-as you earn, which Kenyans are talking about, is for those who are earning a gross of more than 500,000.
Like you.
Like ourselves. So any member of parliament who is against this is not against because he really talking about Kenyans, because there's no Kenyans who is earning less than 500,000 will be subjected to that 5%. Majority of those who are earning over 500,000 are the members of parliament, and I know quite a number of them in the other side. They may not want to be subjected to 5%, an extra 5%. So let Kenyans know when it is high time now for those who are earning more than 500,000
to show that they wait for the rest.
Yes.
Okay.
And there are very few. There are very few Kenyans earning more than 500,000.
The question on wastage, very quickly before we wind up.
It is true that the president has come out and the government has come out firmly to dealing with any wastage. We saw what happened yesterday as far as KEMSA is concerned, and we have seen what has happened today as far as the issues of sugar is concerned, and this is direction. President is firm. He's not talking about fighting corruption. He's not talking about the issues of wastage. He is dealing with it firmly. He is addressing. The other regime was busy talking about corruption, was busy talking about wastage. You don't talk, you act firmly, and we have seen what the president has done, and we support him in that direction. That is the way to go.
As I welcome Regina, a very quick one, probably 30 seconds, because this is your commitment to Kenyans.
Okay.
When this bill comes to the floor of the House, Peter Kihungi, the MP for Kangema, what will you do?
Mine, first of all, is that most of the pending dues that the previous government committed are in my constituency. And I am pushing the president to act on them. And therefore, whenever we come to issue of levying revenue to be able to act on development, I will support it. Okay. And I'm there to support the president. This is our government. We cannot run away from the president. The intentions are good. And whenever the president will go out of the way, we will tell him. Okay. But we have seen him coming out as the president and giving us the concept and what he thinks about the country. It gives us confidence to support him. Okay. But when he loses the way, we just tell him. But on this, we are working with the president, and I am one of the major beneficiaries of the pending projects that we need to be revived.
All right.
Yeah.
Geoffrey Ruko, the member of parliament from Mbeere North, when this bill comes before the floor of the House, what will you do?
My constituency needs urgently tarmac roads. We need tarmac road. We need dams in my constituency to improve the water and irrigation issues which are facing my people for many years. This bill will give us resources that government can be able to use so that my people can get roads, so that my people can be able to get dam. We'll fight for it so that we can get that.
All right. So we put a cap on Prime Edition tonight. We've been speaking to the Member of Parliament for Mbeere North, Geoffrey Ruko, and Peter Kihungi, Member of Parliament for Kangema. They are members of Parliament from Kenya Kwanza. And I really think we needed to hear particularly their views because Regina is back here. So much of what we've had is from the opposition, and what the opposition has said, they stand against this bill. We needed to hear from Kenya Kwanza, and clearly they will pass it.
They will pass it. So I'm just, as Wanjiko at this point, then what was the need then of the public participation?
That was the first question.
Yes.
And I'm sure
Wanjiko will not be taxed at 5%.
Yes.
Wanjiko will not be taxed 3%. We are only taxing those who have who are earning huge money. and 3% so that we can be able to help Wanjiku.
All right.
Yes.
And also, their input, we have not dismissed their input. Between today and Friday, their input will be part of the bill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through this,
at least with that
what
we want to
we'll
put clearly, what we want to put clearly is what the opposition leader said today, that we should do away with the finance bill. You can never. This is a statutory document that must be passed. However it is, we must have a finance bill to be able to have money to spend the next financial year.
All right.
Therefore, whenever the opposition leader says we should not pass the finance bill, that's not practical. It can never happen.
Thank you both of you for coming, and thank you very much for your contribution towards the finance bill. And of course, we hope to hold you to account on what happens after you adopt the finance bill, right? For example, Regina.
I know. Actually, the government intends to spend 3.6 trillion shillings in the next financial budget. So government has to weigh in on how to raise the funds, but also Wanjiku is crying. I know you're saying Wanjiku is not someone who earns a lot of money. These are the people who have a lot of loans, taking children to school and such. Well, I'm Regina Manyara. We put a couple on March's Prime Edition.
Thank you very much for watching Prime Edition. My name is John Jacob Kioria. Have yourself a fantastic week ahead. God bless.
Cheza Loto Moto.
Kwa majina mimi ni Brian Bosiri, natoka Maringo Makadara. Experience yangu basically kwa show ilikuwa fun. Card first nilikuwa nimechagua box number 10 na 7. Nikaacha box number 10 na ndiko na grand prize. Na za jua wacheze Loto Moto ni real. Unaweza kupata chance ya kushinda pesa poa ama great prizes.
Usisahau kucheza Loto Moto. Shinda milioni 2 kila siku kwenye M-Pesa. Chagua lipa na M-Pesa. Paybill number weka 757070. Account number andika neno Loto. Weka kiwango chochote cha pesa kuanzia shilingi 50 hadi 2000. Lipa kisha subiri draw.
The Mozart Bet Cup enters the semi-finals this weekend as the remaining 4 teams battle for the ultimate prize of representing the country in CAF Confederations Cup. Tusker FC will lock horns with Ulinzi Stars from 12 p.m. while the much-awaited Ingo Derby pitting Kakamega Homeboys and AFC Leopards will kick off at 3 p.m. Catch all the action live on KBC Channel 1 from Nyayo National Stadium. KBC Channel 1, your true sports partner.